What is the truth in the stories we are told? We've been given a story of a world fueled by separation. We've become separate from one another, separate from the earth, ultimately separate from the true nature of ourselves. It's time we learn the truth. It's time you rewrite your story. It's time to realign with who it is that you really are. This is the fifth dimension.
You are infinite and eternal. We are infinite and eternal.
Our natural essence, we could say, is simply being.
We have this awakening coming together as a perfect storm.
We're ready for this. We have the capacity inside. We just got to find that.
All right, and we're on the air. I want to welcome everybody into the Fifth Dimension podcast. And for this solo episode, I want to be talking about how to awaken the divine masculine within. This is going to be the first podcast I do, and almost sort of, I don't want to call it a series, but talking about the concept of masculinity. So this is going to really serve as an intro to what is healthy masculinity, what is the divine masculine, and how can we begin to integrate that within ourselves. Whether you're a male or female, the divine masculine is an energy that exists within both males and females, right? But in particular, we're living in an age where men are not embracing their masculinity. Men are being told that the concept of masculinity itself is inherently toxic when that is not the case whatsoever. The so-called toxic masculinity is really just a lack of healthy masculinity. And I really want to dive into that and flesh that out. And so we can create a better society that has the healthy balance of the divine feminine, the creation, the mother, and the divine masculine, the father, protector, stability, right? And, so many of us, and myself included for so long, I wasn't living in a place of stability, wasn't living in a place where I felt secure in who it is that I really am, right? When I think about, now that I've been doing this inner work and really learning about healthy masculinity and how to embody it, I'm finding the first trait of healthy masculinity is in just being grounded, being stable. You have this root foundation of who it is that you are and the energy that you hold and being steady in that, right? We could think of a redwood, right? A tall tree, stable for hundreds of years. But what does it start out as? It starts as a small seedling, and there's so many roots underneath it that we can't even begin to imagine how deep they go. That is the essence of masculinity. There is a stability, there is a force, a protective element that does not waver in its, I guess you could say, energy, right? And I want to dive into that, but that's just sort of the first thing that came to mind when talking about this. And I think we need to approach it from a place of feeling grounded, feeling stable in who it is that we really are. So particularly for men and women who are listening to this, but especially my fellow brothers listening to this episode, know that your masculinity is healthy. And we are coming into this to embrace it. We are coming into this to take confidence in who it is that we are. We don't need to feel ashamed of masculinity for being men. We need more masculinity in this culture. And I'm going to dive into that deep. So I want to start off by thinking, what is your own orientation with masculine energy, right? That's how we're going to approach this. The first way to unpack masculinity is to understand what are our own implicit biases, what are our own thoughts about masculinity, how do we approach it and almost sort of relearn what we've been taught, right? We hear so much about patriarchy society, right? And I don't disagree in the sense, I do believe there is a patriarchal nature that I guess you could say rules Western culture and starting to spread around the world. But what I see that as is it's not healthy masculinity that is the foundation of this patriarchy. Essentially, what the patriarchy is unhealthy masculinity. It's the fact that so many men are living in a boyhood psychology and have not transitioned properly into adulthood. And I'm going to get into the reasons as to why that is later on in this podcast. But I just want to unpack this idea of patriarchy first, right? So a lot of men are being told in particular that masculinity in its essence, masculinity, just the force, masculine nature in its essence is toxic and creating patriarchy. And we need to, certainly we need a society that is equal, a society that has equal opportunity for men or women, whatever they want to go after, right? Feminism in its roots was a fabulous thing when it was striving for equality of opportunity amongst the sexes. Now we have to absolutely realize that there are differences between masculine energy and feminine energy. And I think it's beautiful actually to embrace those and embrace both the masculine and feminine sides of ourselves, right? But when we start talking about the concept of masculinity, you really have to think about what are the qualities that I view as masculinity. You know, masculinity has gotten a bad rap to be viewed as abusive or manipulative or overpowering. And what that is the boyhood psychology. It is the unhealthy masculine. It is the masculine that feels the need to control because they have no control over themselves. So what do? They fear women in particular. This is why we see so much abuse of women over the ages. I mean, you could make the argument that in modern Western culture, there has never been a embodiment of healthy masculinity among the masses. I mean, it's certainly very rare. I'm sure it's happened in certain cultures. In shamanic traditions, absolutely there is a healthy embodiment of masculine energy. But in a lot of societies where we see this manipulating force, it is an unhealthy masculine energy that really manifests itself as almost this tyrant seeking to control, right? A lot of what I'm coming from here, I've been reading this great book from the recommendation of my friend Kayvon, who was previously on the show. Definitely go check out that episode if you want. We talk about mindfulness. But it's called The King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, Rediscovering the Archetypes of the Mature Masculine. Right? And I'm not going to dive into all these archetypes today. That's going to be on for a later episode. And I'd actually love to have a guest on to talk about the different archetypes and how we've embodied them in our lives and share different experiences. I think that would be a great episode. But when we're thinking about the manipulating force, we have this king energy within us, right? That's the leader. That's the protector of the realm, if you will. But I mean, we've seen throughout history how kings can be tyrants. So if you're embodying this tyrant energy within you, it's the unhealthy king. You are seeking to control, and you're seeking to control both healthy masculinity and healthy femininity alike, right? And that's what's created sort of this almost patriarchal nature that does exist, right? It does exist. If you look at our elected officials, let's say in Congress, are they embodying healthy masculinity? A lot of them. I'll let you answer that question for yourself. I'd say the answer is fairly self-evident, right? But we need to look at what are the true qualities of masculinity and how can I reshape my relationship to recognize that masculinity is a good thing and we need more of it. How do you view yourself? Let me ask my fellow men here. How is it that you view yourself? How did you view your own masculinity? Do you feel that you cannot speak up or you cannot be assertive in nature, are you repressing your own natural masculine energy, your own strength, your own ability to be yourself fully? Only you can answer that question. I mean, I know I did for a long time. I would say I was living for the longest time in maybe 80 to 85% of my feminine energy was lived in, or that's what I was like embodying. I very rarely touched my masculine. I was afraid to speak up. I didn't want to, and the reason was I didn't want to cause trouble, if you will. I was very much a yes man. I had trouble saying no because I didn't have healthy boundaries. I was not stable in my foundation as a man. And there was reasons for that. And I'm going to dive into what it is in the modern world. The reasons that we don't have healthy masculinity is because we've created a society that goes against our own nature in bringing out masculinity, right? In the modern world, the first, like a huge thing that we are seeing is the breakdown of the family systems, right? I mean, fatherlessness is a massive problem, particularly in the United States. I don't know what it looks like in other cultures. I haven't experienced that, but fatherlessness is a huge problem. If you don't have a father figure to show you what masculinity is, what healthy masculinity is, where are you going to get that education? Where are you going to find the healthy masculine energy embodied? You know, if you don't grow up with it in your lives, it's not going to be present, right? So we need, at the very least, father figures to help bring out our masculine energy. And I'm going to touch on this a little bit later in the podcast. And when we explore the idea of how to almost reparent, because I do want to touch on that. But another factor that I also want to touch on before diving into that is this disappearance of ritual, disappearance of almost initiation of boys into manhood, right? I talked a little bit about the boy psychology. I'm going to dive more into that in a minute. But we don't have any ceremonies. We don't have any traditions, any rituals that will make the boys become men, right? I mean, just think of any movie that you watch. I mean, it could be a Disney movie, anything, what's embodying almost the hero's journey, right? The hero, in a sense, has to leave the boyhood and step into themselves fully and develop the qualities of leadership, develop the qualities of stability and confidence in themselves. And essentially, you know, the boy has to die so the man can become born, right? This boy psychology, and you know, we all, as children, it's normal to have this boy psychology. Like, we're children. We're meant to play. We're meant to explore. But when the time comes to become an adult, we need to let go of the boy. I just did a podcast about talking about the inner child. This does not mean neglecting the inner child. We still need to connect with it, be willingness to be playful, be curious, but we need to let go of the immature qualities of ourselves and truly step into healthy masculine energy. Otherwise, it's going to control our lives in a very unhealthy way. And I want to read an excerpt from King Warrior, Magician Lover. And it's giving an example of this ritualistic process, right? And ritual is something that has existed in shamanic cultures for a long time. Native American cultures have rituals, boyhood to manhood, hunter-gatherer societies. There was these initiations into manhood, and we're seeing more communities actually, engage in initiation processes. And I think plant medicine ceremonies, ayahuasca in particular, can serve as a great initiation into the depths of the self to really uncover what it is that you have been repressing, or what it is that you've been holding on to from boyhood that you need to let go of. But I'm just going to read this because this is a good example. A good explicit example of this can be found in the movie The Emerald Forest. Here, a white boy has been captured and raised by Brazilian Indians. One day, he's playing in the river with a beautiful girl. The chief has noticed his interest in the girl for some time. This awakening of sexual interest in the boy is a signal to the wise chief. He appears on the riverbank with his wife and some of the tribal elders and surprises Tommy at play with the girl. The chief booms out, "Tommy, your time has come to die." Everyone seems profoundly shaken. The chief's wife, playing the part of all women, of all mothers, asks, "Must he die?" The chief threateningly replies, "Yes." Then we see a fire-lit nighttime scene in which Tommy is seemingly tortured by the older men in the tribe and forced into the forest vines. He is being eaten alive by jungle ants. He writhes in agony, his body mutilated in the jaws of the hungry ants. We fear the worst. Finally, the sun comes up though, and Tommy is still breathing. He's taken down to the river by the men and bathed. The clinging ants wash from his body. The chief then raises his voice and says, "The boy is dead, and the man is born." And with that, he is given his first spiritual experience, induced by a drug blown through a long pipe into his nose. He hallucinates, and in his hallucination discovers his animal soul, an eagle, and soars above the world in new and expanded consciousness, seeing, as if from a God's eye view, the totality of his jungle world. Then he is allowed to marry. Tommy is a man, and as he takes on a man's responsibilities and identity, he is moved first into the position of a brave in the tribe, and then into the position of chief. So, this transition into manhood, it's symbolic of the raising of one's consciousness. It's symbolic of death, rebirth in its finest form. When we talk about the concept of death, so many people fear death, and that the fear of death has been exploited tremendously in the past year. But we need to be comfortable with death, and in particular, the death of who we think we need to be, so we can allow our natural growth processes, our natural evolution to take place, right? And this is why I think plant ceremonies and ayahuasca ceremonies are so important and so prevalent. And I myself am looking into ayahuasca in the very near future. Been accepted into a ceremony, so I'll keep you posted on that later down the line. But we've lost this ritual initiation that kills the boy, in a sense, and teaches responsibility, and teaches that, you need to be stable, you need to be protective, you need to embrace your strength, physical, inner strength, spiritual growth, evolution of consciousness. All of that has been lost in the modern Western culture. And we've really, replaced it with almost like pseudoistic rituals, you could say. I mean, we have the military is a good example of boys going and, in a way, becoming men. I mean, for many, the military does create men. And I actually applaud that aspect of the military. It doesn't do it for everybody, but I've noticed that a lot of military men are very confident and stable in their masculine energies. I think at times, because of the trauma that comes from war, you really lose touch with that healthy balance of the femininity, right? And the creation and the mother. So that side really needs to be nurtured. But we also see things like gangs, right? Why is it that fatherless boys in the inner city of Chicago, for example, this is a prevalent There's so much science around this. Why is it that they are attracted to gangs? Because it offers them community. It offers them initiation into this new life, from boyhood into what they perceive as manhood. And that's the key right there. It's perceived manhood. Oftentimes, gang culture is patriarchal in the sense that it's really just the expression, again, of that boyhood masculinity. And because there is manipulating factors, there is control, there's violence within gang culture. And that's really what that is, but it offers that initiation, which we need as young men to transition into adulthood. That is what so many young men are seeking. And, we give them these promises of college. We give them these promises of, you'll live a great life. Da, 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 da. You'll follow this particular line. But we have completely evaporated the stability and the foundation of masculinity in the process because we don't have that ritual. We don't have healthy masculine fathers leading by example that can offer that ritual to many young men, right? The masculinity of men is plummeting, and so this is only going to continue unless men reparent themselves and learn to embrace their masculinity. With a boy psychology, you are wounding yourself because you're not living up to your fullest potential, and you are wounding others. You see boy psychology taking out with abuse on females. We see it looking to control other opinions, other perspectives. That's why so many men in particular nowadays, if anything, when we're talking about, let's say, I don't know, you could talk about politics, you could talk about the mainstream narrative on a lot of different subjects. I'll let you decipher that as you will. But if anything, it's women who are much more open-minded and embracing different perspectives because they recognize they have more of a healthy masculine within them than our men do. And they're more divinely connected. And our men are not stable in their foundation. They're not stable in the fact that they have their perspective, they have their truth, but then there are other truths as well. Your worldview is not the only worldview, and it is only the unhealthy masculine that does not recognize that. And that's why you see cancel culture rampant. That's why you see the division taking place, and people, we have the tyrant rulers seeking to divide and control because they're not stable themselves. Anybody who is seeking to control another person, another perspective, really anything, whether it be physically, mentally, spiritually, is not stable in their own masculine energy. That is a fact. It is psychology. Healthy masculinity is nurturing. It is regenerative. It is fertile. It is growth. It is expansion of consciousness. It is health, strength, confidence, love. And it's mystical and it's beautiful. As I've become to learn to embrace my masculinity and fully embrace my masculinity, I have never had so much self-love. I have never felt so confident in what it is that I'm doing. I've never felt so motivated to find mastery in my craft, mastery in what all I want to accomplish. I see the infinite that exists within me, and I recognize I have visions of this is the highest possible timeline as long as I am embracing fully and living my truth. I can see what the future holds. I see it. I have visions of it because I'm fully stable in my foundation. I've healed the root chakra. I mean, there's certainly more that I can do in that, and it's an ever-ending journey to learn to embrace this side of yourself. But once you open the door to it, there's so much beauty and gifts that come with it. You know, this symbolic death that I talked about, it must occur. It must occur. You know, this can be the death of the ego. It's ultimately the death of your old way of being into adulthood. I mean, you hear all the time about how so many adults are living with child brains, right? This is exactly what I'm talking about. Boyhood psychology. You need to let go of your old way of being and step into the new. Be the new. And you know, it's because of this lack of ritual, because of this disappearing masculine presence, that we are seeing the collective be so divided. The collective attempting to tear down masculinity. The collective attempting to tear down healthy femininity. You know, we are not seeing equality of opportunity. We are seeing a push for equality of outcome because people want to control one another because they have no control over themselves. And that is because of a lack of healthy masculine energy. So men, it's time to wake up. It's time to embrace your masculinity and love that side of yourself. Stop listening to what society tells you about men being toxic, because you're only toxic as a man if you choose to live in a boyhood psychology and not grow up. That is the only way you're going to be toxic as a man. A healthy man is respectful, is grounded, is protective, is a leader, courageous. This is the quality, the natural essence of masculinity. And we need to unshackle our minds from this conditioned belief that masculinity is toxic. Only you can make that choice to do so. Now, how can we, now that we've gone through all this, how can we take the steps to embrace our masculinity? Let's talk about the solution here. It starts with the individual. The collective is a macrocosm of what goes on at the individual level, right? So as more men begin to embrace their masculinity, you know, we will see a rebirth of healthy masculinity in the collective, because it's happening at the individual level. And I'm seeing more men engage in this. I've done it myself. I'm connecting with other men who are doing this. There are some fantastic leaders who are taking charge in this regard. King Randall, for example, big shout out to him. He was on the podcast, and he's making boys into men. That is his mission. That is his mission. And even when I chatted with him on the podcast, I didn't realize how important it was at that time, because I hadn't made that full transition myself. There were still parts that I was hanging on to in the boyhood land, right? But how can we re-examine? The first thing, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we need to re-examine our own beliefs that we have about masculinity. You know, I would encourage you guys, write out what are the qualities that you admire in men. Or write out, who are men that you admire, right? Think of one. Any man in your life, or it could even be a celebrity. It could be somebody who is famous, or a man in your life that you admire. Why do you admire them? What are the qualities that they hold that you see? Ultimately, when we admire somebody, and this goes back to, you know, children admire people all the time and attempt to imitate and replicate. Admiration is simply us recognizing an ideal potential that we see within ourselves that we would like to accomplish. So if you're admiring certain qualities of a man, you know, maybe it's their leadership ability, maybe it's their strength, you know, you see that as your ideal. That is what admiration is. So what are you going to do to take the steps to bring out those qualities within yourself? Because they exist. You wouldn't admire them if they did not already exist within you, because that admiration is the recognition of your own idealistic, untapped potential. That's what it is, right? So start thinking about men that you admire, qualities that you admire in the masculine that maybe you don't quite embody yet, but this admiration is proof that it exists within you. And we also need to think about fatherhood. How is the relationship with your father? If your father is still around, my father passed away 5 years ago, but even now, I almost feel like I have a stronger connection with him than I ever did when he was alive, because I've embraced the fact that, one, he was wounded in himself. He did the best that he could. And, I've had meditative experiences where I've connected. You can feel their presence, their energy. Had him in dreams. And there's been a love that is so deep for they did the best they could. And not only did they do the best they could, recognize that the father or the primary father figure in your life is just what you needed so that you can unlock the certain skills, the untapped potential within you. They gave you a certain perspective so that you could carry that perspective into your experience, your daily experience, right? And, maybe there's a lot of wounds there, and, it's not easy to embrace that. But even now, we have the opportunity to reparent ourselves. A perfect example of somebody who has been helping me with my own masculinity is Jordan Peterson. I mean, he in one of his lectures, he mentioned somebody wrote to him in just in a letter, and they said they were in an ayahuasca ceremony, the person, and for some reason Jordan Peterson came into the picture, and the person asked, "What is Jordan Peterson here to do?" And the plant, the mother in creation, responded, "He is here to awaken the divine masculine." And I so resonated with that because he has helped me awaken my own divine masculine and give me advice on personal responsibility, stability. Make your damn bed, get up in the morning, and take charge of your day. Recognize that you are the creator of your reality. And it's hard. Life is not easy, but you can choose the direction you go. Even if you're working in some terrible job, you can choose the mindset of being miserable in that job, or you could give it your all and see what happens, right? There's so many, qualities that are lacking in this society, and I think number one is personal responsibility. The number one quality we are lacking as a collective is personal responsibility. We see that now with said pandemic. Nobody wants to take responsibility for their own health. Instead, they want to control you. They want to shove a needle in your arm so you can get a COVID jab, so you can wear a mask. They don't talk about eating healthy. They don't talk about working out. They don't talk about getting sunlight. There's a lack of personal responsibility in this society, and one of the first ways you can awaken your own divine masculine energy is by taking some personal responsibility for yourself, for your actions. Don't feel shame for where it is that you are right now. All of your choices in the past, recognize, have led you to where you are right now. And, that can be kind of scary. Naturally, a conditioned response might be to feel shame, might be to be like, oh shit, I've really screwed up in the past, right? But there is nothing more liberating than taking on that perspective, because then you recognize that from here on out, every choice you make moving forward will create your future reality, will create your present now. All the choices that you make here on out, they impact everybody. They impact you, they impact the people around you, they impact your community and the world at large. So start taking some personal responsibility. You know how to do that. You know how to do that for you. It's a great time to ultimately make those decisions that you have been putting off, right? I have a sip of tea. I'm thirsty. I'm yelling right now. I'm fired up about the masculine energy. Ah, that feels good. Drink some tea. Tea is good for you. Helps awaken your masculine, says me. But, take some personal responsibility and be action-oriented. Well, here's the thing. Be action-oriented, but don't feel like you always need to do. Find that balance of being content in your own being, and from that space of being, you know what actions you need to take, right? When I wrote my book, it was not from a pressure standpoint of I need to do this. It was from I am feeling aligned, I'm feeling good, this is going to flow out of me right now. And it did, right? So be action oriented, be assertive, but do not be controlling. Do not be manipulative. And recognize when you need to take a step back. Find that healthy balance. Be sure to meditate. Be sure to relax. Do yoga, breath work, drink plenty of water. Self-care is the ultimate personal responsibility. There is nothing that it can be, I would say, considered self-love more than self-discipline. Self-love is the ultimate self-discipline. Self-discipline is the ultimate self-love. However you want to phrase that, right? So take some responsibility for your vibrational state. Every day you wake up is a new beginning, a new opportunity for a different vibrational attraction, for a different choice. You've been engaging in self-sabotage? You don't need to make that choice today. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about the rest of your life. Today, you don't need to make the choice to self-sabotage. Today, you can choose to feel good in your beingness. Regardless of whatever actions, in your beingness, you can choose to feel good. Take some responsibility for that. That is the ultimate trait of the divine masculine. And from this, you can be a leader. Engage in some leadership positions. How can you lead? What are you comfortable in? What are you good at? We're talking again about self-mastery. What is your skill? What is your trade? What do you want to do? How can you be a leader, an example? This goes into fatherhood again, right? Envision yourself in the fathership role. What are the qualities that you want to bring out? And demonstrate if the world is your children. If you are a father to everyone around you, if you are a teacher to those around you, what is your gift? What is your contribution? The healthy masculine is a contributor. He's a giver. And he's a lover. He wants to help in any way possible because purpose goes beyond the individual self. Purpose always goes beyond the individual self in the healthy, divine masculine. You drop the narcissism. You drop the self-interest, right? That is a healthy, divine masculine. What are you working towards for the betterment of humanity, right? And find your niche. You really need to become a mastery of your craft. Whatever it is that you want to do creatively, whatever it is that you want to do, in any area. Could be at your job. Could be, maybe you want to be a better lover. I don't know. Find your niche. Find something that you love to do and make it a part of your purpose. And do it beyond just self-interest. Look to lead. Look to help. Look to create the world that you want to leave for your children. You want to create your legacy through this, right? When we look at kings, for example, king is one of the male masculine archetypes. And we'll dive into that in a later episode. But what is the legacy of a king? If the king was a tyrant, controlling, manipulative, that is remembered. If the king was a just ruler, fair, equal, a leader, that is also remembered. It is the same for you. At the end of the day, when you die, people don't talk about your job. They don't talk about your material. They talk about who you were as a person. They talk about the characteristics that you brought to the table, right? Step fully into who it is that you're supposed to be at an energetic level, right? And really bring about some self-confidence. Sit up straight. Let me adjust my posture a little bit. I was a little bit slouched. I wasn't that slouched. I promise you, for all those listening, I was sitting up pretty straight. Those on YouTube could see for themselves where I was at. But sit up straight. Move your body, lift some weights, find something to bring out that side of you, right? It's interesting because I really started becoming more comfortable in my masculine energy from picking up boxing. And it was, you were asserting this energy against the punching bag. And it's made me more confident. It's made me more caring and loving, and the ability to recognize the differences in perspective, the differences in opinion, and see through the veil of what society is trying to sell. Because it's trying to sell you fear. It's trying to sell division. We are the product of this tyrannical, patriarchal system that is based in a unhealthy balance of masculine and feminine. If you can find the balance within yourself, and if enough people can do that, we can change the world. Ultimately, all you can do for another person is to become the best version of yourself. I see a big push right now by a lot of people who want to change the world, but they have no control over their own foundation. Again, this goes back into the idea that the masculine is grounded. It's stable. If you can change yourself, you can help change the people around you. If you can help change the people around you, you can help change your community. If you can help change your community, maybe you can help change your country. If you can help change your country, you can help change the world. But it all starts at the individual level. It has to. It has to. If you're not willing to change yourself, you will change nothing. And you will stagnate, and you will become manipulative. You will become the unhealthy masculine. So men, embrace change. Recognize that not only are you probably not right a lot of the times, that you're probably almost never right. Like me included. Like I am still learning. I am still growing. And when somebody challenges my opinion nowadays, I say, hallelujah. Let's go. Let's keep learning. So recognize that your beliefs, you can't spell belief without lie, L-I-E. Your beliefs are not real. They are figments of the mind, creations of the mind. This is all, one holographic reality. Anyways, we can't become too rigid in our beliefs. We can't become too rigid in what we want to be true. We have to embrace truth. And you can recognize truth through your intuition when you are living in a more healthy, balanced, masculine energy, right? And, again, take some accountability, personal responsibility. If you're connected to a higher purpose, you will feel the need to be responsible. I think a big problem is people don't have enough to be responsible for. That's why I think it's important to start your own creative projects. Set goals for yourself, write them down. What do you want to achieve? What is the ultimate ideal for you? How can you achieve that? How can you achieve it? And set an action plan, and then take contentment in the journey. Recognize that in your vibrational point of attraction, where you're at, if you make the choice to feel good, to work hard, to take some responsibility and accountability, you will achieve all that you want to achieve. I promise you that. I promise you that. It may take 6 months, it may take a year, it may take 10 years, depending on what you're aiming at. That's okay. Be realistic. If you're $50,000 in debt and your goal is to make $1 million, maybe don't say you're going to make $1 million in 2 weeks unless you have something that is truly groundbreaking. Be realistic with yourself. Embrace the journey, embrace the trials, embrace the hardships, because those are the ultimate pillars for growth. That's what brings about wisdom. That's what brings about wisdom. And ultimately, I'd say the last thing that I want to wrap up with, embrace the femininity. Embrace the creation. Embrace the mother. Love and nurture it. Don't neglect that side of yourself. Because when you choose to neglect that side of yourself, you can become the tyrant. You can become manipulative. You can have a healthy masculine without a healthy feminine. And it's the same vice versa, right? We really need to embrace both sides of ourselves. Go into meditation. Go inward. Do breath work. Engage in these processes that connect you to the space beyond the mind. Whatever that means for you. Find that. Be in that. And let it guide you. Let it lead you forward from here on out. Right? So I hope this episode was helpful. You know, these are a lot of concepts I've been working with on a personal level, so I feel good about being able to share them with you today. This is a pretty decent length for a solo podcast. I don't always hit the 45-minute mark, but here we are. We've made it. So thanks for listening. If you're a fan of the show, be sure to subscribe, whatever your platform is. You know, I'm certainly going to be doing more episodes about masculinity because I think we need more healthy masculinity. We need more healthy males in this culture, in this society. And as I've connected with my own masculine, I've never felt so much self-love, so much discipline. And, you know, we're just going to keep going, keep riding the train, see where it takes us. But so be sure to subscribe, whatever platform you're on. Give us a rating on Apple Podcasts. That really does help the show. It helps more people find it. Share this out with one man in your life who you think needs this episode. Seriously, share it out with one man right now. Somebody in your contact list, one of your friends, maybe it's your boyfriend, maybe send it to your father. I don't know. Somebody, a male in your life who you think needs this episode. Share it with them. Be sure to check out evanmcdermott.org. You can sign up for my mailing list. You can also see some of the courses that I have on there. I'm actually developing a man's course to reconnect with the divine masculine within. So, I mean, that's probably something I do over the next couple months. So keep your eyes out on it. You can sign up for the mailing list, and I'll send out an email when that's actually up and available. And I'm sure I'll mention it on a podcast as well. But you can also get my new book. I mentioned it in the podcast during it at some point. Story of Interconnectivity. Link is in the episode description. And head on over to social media at the Fifth Dimension Podcast on Instagram. Also at Evan McDermott on Instagram, on Twitter. And, you know, come say hi. Come connect. I've been having fun on social media as I've been just more outgoing and more grounded and centered. So, you know, I think it's been noticeable. I think it's been noticeable in the episodes as well because we're doing better than we've ever done. Twice the number of downloads last month than any other month. We're growing. And we are growing large, baby. So keep on at it. I appreciate all you guys' support. And with that, that's going to wrap up this episode, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you all next time. So long. Holy shit, my voice is giving out.